Kenyan President William Ruto announcing he's decided to not sign the controversial Finance Bill 2024 into law. It's a victory for young Kenyans who've been protesting against the proposed tax hikes. At least 22 demonstrators died yesterday when protests turned violent. Police opened fire when an angry mob in Nairobi stormed the parliament.
On my own behalf, and on behalf of these members and many other Kenyans, I send my condolences to the families of those who lost their loved ones in this very unfortunate manner. Consequently, having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024, and listening keenly to the people of Kenya who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn, and I have agreed with these members that that becomes our collective position.
Well, 22 people dying in those protests after police, we understand, fired live ammunition when a group of people crossed the boundary into the Kenyan's parliament. Wangechi Kahuria is the convener of the Police Reforms Working Group in Kenya. Wangechi, good afternoon to you. How would you describe the way in which the Kenyan police have responded to these protests in your country?
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having us, and good evening, South Africa and the world. Indeed, we had the protests, that were held over the last couple of days, and the Kenyan youth have been on the streets due to the punitive finance bill. And fortunately, yesterday was a very dull day for Kenya when the police opened live fire on the protesters, who I must, emphasize were peaceful and unarmed. All they had on them were placards describing and giving their call to the rejection or for the rejection of this bill, and their voices. Those are the only things they had on them. So it's a very sad day for Kenya, and it resulted to the death of those 22, with a lot of people admitted in hospitals and nursing wards and injuries. And I must also point out that we had also a lot of unlawful abductions and enforced disappearance. There are still young people we do not know of their whereabouts. That's the situation.
Is it normal, Wangechi, for police in Kenya to fire live ammunition? I mean, it happens here in South Africa sometimes. Is it normal in Kenya?
It is normal. I mean, it has happened before. I wouldn't say it's normal, but it has happened before. So let's say that it's a tactic that has been used by police of various protests. Last year, during the political protests that we had, we did report that 67 people lost their lives over about 9 months. And part of those that died was a result of live fire. So yes, that has happened before. It is not normal. It is not acceptable. And as you know, it's obviously against the human rights, the international conventions, and also against our own constitution that provides for the right to picket and to voice ourselves.
Do we know, why police reacted in this way? And I know there'll be a big investigation. At this stage, did someone give officers the order to fire? Could someone have panicked? It's very difficult to know. I know these situations move very, very quickly, and people do get scared.
Yeah, we do know. We do not know why that happened, but obviously we are aware that there must have been a command from some place, because you don't just get onto your knees and fire. If you have had an opportunity to look at the videos that were taken, we had a scenario where a sniper was, perched on top of a building, and they were firing directly onto the crowd below. And in another instance, we see policemen on their knees in a fire position, firing into the crowd. And so we definitely are aware there must have been some command from some place. We are not sure from where, and we are not sure what triggered that.
And I imagine there'll be questions about the leadership of the police. And again, this is something we discuss in South Africa fairly often, the way in which the police are led. How are police led in Kenya? I mean, do you trust the leadership of the police there?
That's a very interesting question. Now, as a police reforms working group, last year we had a presidential task force that was looking into the conduct and the service of the National Police Service. And they have raised pertinent questions around police capacity, adequacy of training, and attitude, and a lot of things, including their motivation, their mental health, their mental well-being. What we know for sure is that there has been some high level of impunity, and there has been no command responsibility over or during the previous protests. Last evening, immediately after that incident, we did note that the regional commandant of the police in Nairobi city was recalled to the headquarters and a new person put in. But that is not a solution per se. It's more of a structural issue that has to be addressed. So it has been happening. There are lots of issues that have been raised over and over. But I must admit that there are very high levels of impunity, attitude issues, as well as capacity issues.
The other problem we have, Wangechi, and I mean, it's interesting to see how many similarities there are, but when police do this, when this happens, they lose legitimacy. And as I understand policing, it's all about consent. As a citizen, you consent to being policed. You agree to follow the instructions of a police officer. You agree to the arrest. I mean, it's a very important thing. When police do this, they lose that legitimacy. And that means people don't listen to them. Do you worry that this will have damaged the legitimacy of the police in Kenya?
Yes, we do. And there is a provision for what we call in Kenya the community policing. And this community policing was actually put in place to try and address that concern that you have raised. Unfortunately, in as much as it was provided for, it has not been operationalized. It's actually been left at the goodwill of commanding officers, station commanding officers, to either take it or not. Yet it's a fundamental structure that would bridge the gap between the police and the citizens and help build confidence. Indeed, the task force report that I'm talking about also raised the issue of trust, mistrust between the citizens and the police. And we must admit that in Kenya, we now must put into place that structure. We need to nurture it. We need to make it work for the betterment of the citizens.
Wangechi Kahuria, thank you very much indeed. Convener of the Police Reforms Working Group in Kenya. Very busy time for you. I really do appreciate it.